But if you have your Bibles, let's turn to Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. We are still continuing on this Life and Ministry of Jesus series, mainly really focusing on Jesus' teachings. And we come to this section, depending on the translation that you have. Verse 12 of chapter 7, it's either at the end of a section, or if you actually are using the NLT, you'll notice of something very unique, that this verse by itself is a separate section. In your Bibles, you see things like, for example, if you look at chapter 7, you see before verse 1, judging others. Then before verse 7, ask, seek, knock. And then before verse 13, the narrow and the wide gates, or something to that effect. But this verse, chapter 7, verse 12, it kind of stands alone in the New Living Translation. And it says this: do to others whatever you would like them to do to you. This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. We come to a very interesting section today, this morning. In this section, in this one verse, Jesus is talking about relationships. He's addressing relationships. And when we think about relationships, when we look at the relationships that are in our lives, the difficult ones, I'm sure we all have that, as well as the good ones. When we look at the relationship, there's a challenge to always, it never stays the same. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Relationships always evolve, always change. Sometimes it's one moment it's good, another moment it could be bad. Friendships can be like that. One moment you're great, another minute something happens and you're not talking anymore. There are people that you and I get along with really well. It's very easy for us to get along with. It could be hobbies, or it could be some kind of interest that we have. And then there are people that are a little more challenging. The unique challenge of relationships is that sometimes it requires so much work. And many times, I think we approach our relationships with wanting the other person to initiate, or wanting the other person to show us love, show us care. Then when we come here to this section and this teaching, Jesus kind of turns that expectation around. And he says, look, regardless of what other people are to you, this is how I want you to treat other people. What does Jesus teach about relationships? How are we supposed to treat people? The answer is very simple here. We treat them the way that we want to be treated. That is, in essence, what verse 12 is saying. One of the characteristics that Jesus emphasizes of his disciples is love. He says in John chapter 13, verse 35, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. You are my disciples. You see, love is supposed to be the marker that sets us apart as his disciples. But the question that I want you to ask this morning is, does love set me apart? Does love set me apart? When people look at me, when they see me, is love so evident in my life that it sets me apart from others around me? We know that we're called to love. And one of the ways that we can love one another or love others is to do what verse 12 says, is to treat other people well. Is to treat other people well. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12 is also known as the Golden Rule. Perhaps you're familiar with that term, the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule basically is a rule, a general rule for how to behave that says that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, you treat other people the way that you want to be treated. The Golden Rule. When you look at the golden rule, it seems like a very simple principle. But when we apply it into our daily lives, into our interpersonal relationships, the challenge becomes evident. It's a challenge to apply it to each and every single relationship. There are people that for whatever reason, we don't get along with them. Sometimes people just rub us the wrong way. Sometimes it's their position. You know, a pattern that I've noticed more and more, especially now during the election year, political differences can really kind of come to the surface. Oh, I don't agree with how can you support this candidate, or how can you support that candidate? Oh, don't you believe in this particular measure? We have to pass this. You know, I was at a Walmart, and I got out of my car and I was walking in, and this old lady just kind of looks at me. She says, "Is that one of those electric cars?" You know, I was driving a Prius. I said, "Oh, no, it's a hybrid." And she's like, "What's that?" And I kind of tried to explain to her. If you try to explain what a hybrid is to someone that really doesn't understand the concept, as we're walking into Walmart, I'm talking to her, explaining. She's like, "Well," she's like, I thought about getting one of those electrics." I said, "Oh, you should, you know." And then she's like, "Oh, I don't." And then when she shared this, I'm widowed. My husband died a couple years ago. I was like, she must be lonely, so that's why she's just talking to some random dude, right? And so we were talking, and I'm trying to go shop, but she just held me there in front of the shopping carts at the entrance for 15 minutes. We talked. And one of the things that she said was, "Are you going to vote?" I said, "I don't know. The candidates, I don't really like any of the candidates." She's like, "Oh, but you have to vote." And then she shared her views. She said, "You have to vote for a certain candidate." I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that, And then we just talked back and forth. And, even in that short conversation, meeting someone that's a complete stranger, in this kind of a season, when the election year is coming, our political differences. So obviously, her and I, we didn't see eye to eye in which candidate would best lead our nation. When you see that, when you experience that within your family, within your workplace, on online forums, we see differences. And in doing so, in those moments, we see our impatience come out. We're rude, we cut people down. The golden rule seems like such a simple principle, but when we try to apply it to our lives, it becomes very challenging. Depending on the situation, we treat people differently. We would treat a stranger differently than our family or our friends. Our coworkers, we treat them differently. Within many different people that we associate with each day, depending on who they are, depending on the circumstance, the way we treat them differs. And I think what Jesus is saying here is the golden rule is there so that we treat people the same no matter what, no matter who they are. How we treat those people is the same way that we would like for them to treat us. That's the principle of the golden rule. Jesus basically is calling for consistency. This morning I want to identify a couple of areas that I think Christians really struggle with, and address two areas that I think Christians must improve if we're going to make an impact for Christ, if we're going to do what our mission statement says. I think there's two areas that we have to avoid and two areas where we have to have significant improvement. First thing that we have to avoid is this: Christians must avoid a judgmental attitude. We struggle with judging. We're no different in that sense than those who would not call themselves a disciple or a follower of Jesus. We struggle with judging, and I think this is part of our nature, human nature. Chapter 7, at the beginning, of chapter 7, verses 1 and 2, Jesus says, do not judge. Okay, so the whole aspect of judging is addressed within the Sermon on the Mount of chapter 7. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. You cannot read this verse and not get convicted. To me, this is a very sobering verse. Because even now, I find myself kind of tilting towards judging. And usually it's because maybe someone does something that I don't agree with. You kind of look down upon them, or you think differently, or a little less of them. Like I said, in this political season, or in the election year, when all of these things are coming up, all of these different issues are coming up, and they come to the surface, and we're supposed to vote for them. I almost don't talk politics with anyone, because we're bound to end in disagreement, and then that can cause some, issues and problems. This is also sobering because I think I am guilty, as well as probably many of us here, of judging. Judging occurs all around us. It happens in our schools, happens in our churches. It's occurring everywhere. And we fall victim to judgment or judging, and we are guilty of judging as well. There was a high-end department store that opened up in downtown Portland many, many years ago, maybe over 20 years ago. And I remember one day my friends and I, we were just kind of walking around downtown. We wanted to go into the mall, so we were outside and we just cut through this particular store. Before I got married, I didn't have a ring. I didn't really wear watches. I don't have fancy jewelry. I don't wear designer clothes. So when you look at me, there's a certain, I would definitely feel out of place in a store like that. On that particular day, my friends and I, 4 or 5 of us, we were wearing shorts, tank tops, flip-flops. And we went into this store. So we were walking through. As soon as we open the door, we walk in. You feel something already. As we were kind of walking through, we kind of see the eyes of the salespeople. And they're salespeople. They're all dressed in, almost in the same style of clothing. And they were kind of looking at us. And I think for the first time in my life, going into a store, I felt like they were judging us. Like almost like, what are you guys doing in here? You guys are in the wrong store. I felt like their eyes were just saying that. And then it's almost an audible voice in our eyes. We felt judged. We walked out of there going, dude, what? Did we just what was it that we just experienced? We felt judged because of our appearance. Our appearance, and in that store and the level of that store, to many of the salespeople, we didn't fit. A father asked his children, 9 and 10-year-old sons, what negative characteristics turn people off about Christians? A father asked his 9 and 11-year-old sons. His boys responded by saying, when Christians judge other people. The father was shocked because he's thinking, this is my 9-year-old and my 11-year-old children. They are already seeing this when Christians judge other people. Once again, I said that many times I fall victim to this, especially when people do something that I may not agree with or do things that I feel is wrong. We judge other parents for the way that their children misbehave. Sometimes I take my kids out and we go to restaurants and they go crazy and I feel like, man, other people are judging us right now. You know, I used to judge parents when I was single and they cannot control the children on the airplane and the kids are crying like crazy. I'm like, what is wrong with those parents? Why can't they control their kids? Until I had kids and I was on the plane and I was like, oh, so sorry, you know. Just walking back and forth. Flight attendants are like, please, sir, you need to sit down. I was like, there's no way I'm sitting down right now. I got to calm down, my son. It's all perspective, isn't it? But we're judging, those are some of the ways that we judge. Christians struggle just as much. And I said, this is one of the areas that we have to avoid or address. When Christians judge, we have to think about the motive, the heart behind it. I think our intentions might be good in the sense that we want to help. Okay? Especially if it's a friend that's kind of going down the wrong path, we want to step in. We want to help them, make sure that they kind of get off that particular track. It might be something that you yourself has gone through, and you just want to save them the pain. So the intention might be good, but the way that it comes across as is very judgmental. Maybe even hypocritical. Because I think we kind of come across as being, I'm better or I'm holier than you. If you would just listen, your problems will be solved. If your judging brings others down, okay, if your judging brings others down while building yourself up, then you're doing the very thing that Jesus is warning against here in verse 12. Don't tear down other people so that you look good. And sometimes we are guilty of that. We have to avoid this judgmental attitude. Second area that we have to avoid is a hypocritical attitude. Look at Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrites. First get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. We want to help our brother and sister address their struggles in their life. We want them to be freed, or we want them to, maybe they don't know about it, so we want to tell them about it so that they are aware, so that they change. Isn't that a good thing? There's nothing wrong with wanting to help, but often the issue, when it comes to hypocrisy, the issue is that we always want to bring out or point out the errors of others when we have those same things in our own lives. And I think that's what verses 3 through 5 is talking about here. Verse 4, how can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye? And the contrast here is something so small in your eye when you have this log in your eye, something that's very large. So how can you address something so small in another person's life when in your own life you have such a huge thing that you have to deal with as well? That's kind of the contrast that I think Jesus is going here. When we are pointing out the errors of other people, errors in other people's life, or the struggles that they're going through without addressing our own, we lose credibility. Before we can deal with that, Jesus says, look at your own self first. He calls this a hypocritical attitude. Hypocrisy is when we don't do what we tell others to do. That's hypocrisy. We say, hey, you should do this, but we don't do it. Parents, we can be guilty of this. We tell our children to do this and that, but we may not do it. That's hypocrisy. We're so quick to see and point out the hypocrisy in others. But the problem is, they can see it in us as well. When the father asked his children, what is the most negative, one of the negative traits or attributes that people have towards Christians. The sons answered, when Christians judge other people. And they followed it up by saying, when they are hypocrites, which is the second aspect. The Greek word for hypocrite is used to describe an actor in a play who wears a mask, in essence impersonating someone that he or she is not. That is the idea of a hypocrite. You're acting like someone that you are not, that you have put on a mask. We are called to, as disciples, we are called to avoid judging others and being hypocritical. We can't ignore the log in our own eye and point out the plank in someone else's eye. Jesus calls that hypocrisy. We must guard against judging and hypocrisy. Those are the two areas of, I think, of Christians we have to really be on guard against. But then there are also a couple areas that I believe that Christians must make significant improvements. First area that we have to make an improvement on is speaking words of life. There are many areas that we need to improve, but one that gets overlooked are our words. The words that we speak have power. More power than I think you and I realize. The words we speak can brighten someone's day. Just think about this. The words that we speak can brighten someone's day, or it can ruin their day. It can bring a smile, or it can bring a tear. We can encourage someone, or we can destroy someone's confidence with our words. Words have power. Words have power. Whether it was joking or whether it's playful, people have said things to me that have hurt. And I'm sure I have done the same. There have been many times I've regretted the words as it was even leaving my mouth. And you're just like, oh, why did I just say that? It's one area that you and I think we casually just take for granted. Sometimes heat of the moment, heat of the argument, we just say things. Words have power. Think about your words, how you speak to people. Think about then how you feel when certain words are spoken to you. So when we think about the golden rule and we understand this, treat other people the way that you want to be treated. We get it here. We understand it here. But it doesn't translate into our words. It doesn't translate into our hearts. It's a challenge. We all want to be around people who encourage us, who are positive, who we know will brighten our day. Those are the kind of people we want to be with. In fact, those are the people that we tend to gravitate towards. Because when you are with them, you feel good. When you leave their presence, man, that person made my day. Maybe some of you are like that. And if that's the case, that's awesome. That you speak words of life, you speak positive words into others. That your words bring joy to others. We must become such people who speak words of life. We have to be on guard, and we have to improve our words towards others. Second area that we need to make improvement is, I believe, in showing kindness. What does the Bible say about kindness? There's several different verses, but if I can just read a couple real quickly. Ephesians 4:32 says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you." Colossians 3:12 says, "Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience." Eddie Foster, he wrote a little blog about kindness, and he answers this question: what is kindness? He says, it is based on the mindset described in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 through 4. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. Kindness is humbly giving of ourselves in love and mercy to others who may not be able to give anything back, who sometimes don't deserve it, and who frequently don't thank us for it. Just think about this. Kindness is giving ourselves to others who don't ask for it, who don't give us anything back, and who don't thank us for it. Many times we're motivated to do something because we want something in return. We want to receive, hey, thanks. We want to feel appreciated. Those are not bad things in and of itself. But kindness is different. Kindness is basically serving other people without wanting anything in return. Even if they don't say thank you, we don't get offended. We're trying to teach our kids to say thank you. And man, it's hard. They're like, Dad, I want this. I give it to them. I'm like, what do you say? Please? No, you already got it. What do you say? Thank you. So we're trying to teach them this very simple concept. Kindness is to simply to serve other people without wanting anything in return. Basically, kindness means a way of thinking that leads to doing thoughtful deeds for others. Kindness doesn't expect anything in return. Kindness is a way of life. You don't wake up one day and decide, today I'm going to be kind. It's a discipline that must be developed. We must grow in our kindness. Many of you don't know how a moment of kindness can change someone's life. People cherish kindness, and when you go the extra mile, they appreciate it. Kindness gives people hope. When your actions show evidence of a heart that truly cares, people take notice. You don't have to walk around this downtown Portland long. This past week, I don't know, it was Tuesday or Wednesday, in the news, I've been hearing about this spring water corridor. Okay, it's on the east side. You have very different stories of this. From the residents that lived off the corridor, they describe it as a used to be a beautiful place. You can ride your bicycle, you can run down to spring water. Is it lake, river, or something like that? Where you can go down there and do all this stuff. It used to be just a great place where families gather until one day, homeless camps started to come, and the numbers started growing, and neighbors were complaining that they were getting harassed. Of course, all of the crime or whatever other things that were coming, and people were, normally who ride their bikes through that area, they stopped doing that. People stopped walking along that because it became a major hassle to traverse through basically the homeless camps that was on both sides. This past week, they went in and they swept. What they did was they basically told all of them, pick up your stuff, you gotta go. And then it's just many days of cleanup right now. And one of the police officers said this: where do we tell them to go? There is no place to go. All of the shelters in Portland are at max capacity. Where are these people going to go? We know there's no place to go, but we tell them they have to go. That was the irony. There's needs that's all around us. Whether it's homelessness, whether it's a family that's in need. I was just talking to my neighbor the other day, and he's like, oh yeah, he had cancer. I was like, I didn't know. At a very young age, he had prostate cancer, and he had his prostate removed. And now he's slowly, over the last couple of months, just recovering from that. So over the summer, I was like, man, I'm seeing him every day. He hasn't been going to work, so I was like, I wonder what happened. It's just, we never had a chance to sit down and talk until this past week when I was in front of my house, and he just came out because he was actually going to go run just to kind of get back in shape a little bit. Whether it's someone with a health issue, there's needs all around. You see, when you see a need and when you meet that need, when you do it with care, people notice. When you're doing it simply to, I don't know if it's a requirement in high school, but here in Oregon, but in California, a lot of our students had to do community service as part of their curriculum. And one of the things that we had to do in California is whenever we went on, to feed the homeless or to do certain things, students would volunteer, and we would ask them, is this a part of community service? Or is this something that you want to do? And if it's community service, we tend to take less of them. Because we want people to go with a genuine heart to care, not because they can check off some kind of a community service thing. When I was doing ministry in Koreatown, we had students who were in trouble and they had to do community service as part of their hearings or whatever. So they would want to always seek out, can I do this, can I do that, can I come to church and clean for community service? When you have to do something to fulfill those kind of hours, it's very different. When you in that frame of mind, when you show up to places like that, people can see it. But when you go without anything, when you go without wanting anything in return, and simply go and serve, people can see the genuine care. When our actions show evidence of a heart that truly cares, people take notice. The golden rule is not just a nice statement to post up on our wall or desk. It is a guideline that Jesus has given to his disciples as a way to love others, to stand apart as Jesus' disciple. Just imagine if Christians begin to genuinely love other people by speaking words of life, showing kindness to others. Just think about the kind of impact that we can have. We would all experience a different level of interpersonal relationships. What would happen if we stopped judging and instead start showing kindness to those we disagree with, within the church, in our workplaces, within our families, among our friends? When we are wrong to say, you know what, I'm not going to retaliate, I'm just going to speak words of life to you. I'm going to show you kindness. Things would change. That instead of criticizing, instead of tearing down, that we build up, speak life to others. Can you imagine what that would look like? Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's a very simple principle to understand, but very difficult to apply. When we take the golden rule with the call that Jesus has given to us, that we are to be set apart by our love, when you combine that together, I think it enables us to do things, treat people the way we want to be treated, to show kindness, to be motivated by nothing more than simply love, that we don't want anything in return. As followers of Jesus, it's time that we put this principle into practice. May we speak words of life. May we show abundant kindness. Treat people the way we want to be treated.